You're listening to XVGM Radio. Welcome to XVGM Radio, where the bits keep coming. I'm Justin.
And I'm Mike.
And this is episode 105, History of Natsume, Part 3, Natsume Co. Limited, The Later Years.
Oh yeah, we're diving back into our finale for this chapter of Natsume Co. Limited. It's a little confusing, so we've done our best to try to give everybody the details for what happened with Natsume. And I think we've done a pretty good job of kind of breaking down each segment of Natsume's musical history.
I would agree.
Yeah. So this time around, we are going to be talking about what happened to Natsume Co. Limited after the split between Natsume Co. Limited and Natsume Inc. If you are completely lost, go back and listen to our first two episodes on this discussion, which was episode 99, which was the part 1 where we talked about Natsume Co. Limited, and episode 102.
I think.
Yeah, because we made a bunch of 2 jokes at the beginning.
Did we?
We did, yeah. So, yeah, and that handled the Natsume Inc. portion of Natsume, basically more as a publisher and less as a developer. But now we're diving back into kind of a combination of the two, because a lot of these games Natsume Inc. published in North America. But we're also going to be talking about some games that we didn't get here, starting with the game that we came in on just now, which was Medarot 3 Kabuto. This was one of 2 Medarot 3 games, kind of like Pokemon, where they had like red and blue. So they had Medarot Kabuto and Medarot Kuwagata. And there was a special edition of that Kuwagata version as well. This game came out in the Game Boy Color in 2000, and this was BGM 06 by Kinuyo Yamashita with sound directing from Iku Mizutani. What are your thoughts on this one?
This one's kind of boppy. Like, not I wouldn't call it a bop, but the what they got going on there is pretty boppy. I like... this is on the Game Boy Color, so I like the chiptune sounds, and it sounds very spacey to me.
Yeah.
Just with like the beepy synths and whatnot. But I was bopping around to it. It was not high energy, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a good driving beat for sure, but it also reminds me of some other previous Natsume games where they do like a lot of call and answer type stuff, playing around with the synths, kind of a little bit of panning here and there. But I really like this one, and it really caught my attention, so I figured, why not play this one, because it's really good. The rest of the music is also excellent, no surprise there. We've already discussed Kinuyo Yamashita and Iku Mizutani and Hiroyuki Iwatsuki to death on the first 2 parts of these episodes. We're not going to be talking too much about those composers. If you really want to know, again, go back and listen to 99 and 102.
Yeah, and I mean, those are both names that you're going to hear throughout this episode as well. So,
Yes.
We will be doing a little bit less talking about the composers when they are on the roster, just because of the fact that, like Mike said, we've talked about them so much.
Yep.
It just, beating a dead horse.
Yeah, for sure. One of the reasons why I included Medarot, it's called Metabot in the US.
The series is the Metabot series.
Right, but it's called Medarot in Japan.
The game, yeah.
Yeah. But one of the reasons why I wanted to include this intro is because Natsume Code Limited worked on a number of Metabot games over the course of their later years. And so I thought it would be good to like kind of feature this. It wasn't originally in the rest like of our picks.
Right.
So I was like, we got to get something Medarot related in. And when I heard this one, it was like perfect. So I will say that it's unfortunate that we're not able to play this game because it is Japanese exclusive. There is a collection that came out on the Switch fairly recently called Medarot Classics Plus.
Oh.
There was also one called Medarot Classics, which came out on the 3DS. The issue is that both the Classics and Classic Plus sets, they include a ton of the games, which is great. Medarot 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 Susu Takemura no Tenkosai. But the issue is that they're all in Japanese, and they did not translate them for American audiences. So kind of unfortunate because the music is great. So
yeah. Well, I mean, we live in a day and age where you can pick up your phone, open up a Google Translate app, point it at a screen, and then just kind of like play the game on your Switch through your phone.
True. I've tried that with a couple games, and it just didn't work. It didn't work for me.
Huh.
Yeah.
I've not had a problem doing that with games. In the Gunpla stuff that I do on Tuesdays, every so often there will be something on the instruction sheet that's in Japanese. I'm just like, I need to know what this is. And then sometimes I'll look at it and I'm like, that wasn't helpful. Like these are descriptor words that don't help me. And sometimes it'll be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, like do this first,
right?
In order not to break things. So, but it's funny because sometimes it'll see the symbols, but it won't translate them because if the light and the paper, like if there's like light and darkness kind of going through the word, I can read it, but the camera's just like, I don't know what's here.
There's 16,845 parts in this box. 484, sir. Yes. Medarot 3 is basically a continuation of the series. It features a story about a character named Iki Tenryu and his friends who have defeated in the previous game the Robo Gang. So the town was at peace, and now all of a sudden Iki and his pals have to go to a bunch of different locations to stop a new threat that has appeared in town, including some new locations like the moon. Ooh. So, and they get to learn about the origin of the Medarots. The Medarots are basically like robots.
Yeah.
Like, kind of like robot Pokemon.
Yeah.
I guess
I was going to say, it's kind of like robot Pokemon.
Yep. Each version of the game had a limited edition, so it wasn't just Kuwagata that got one. There was a Kabuto that also got one, and that included 3 of the trading card game cards, and also a Medarot medal. Medarot is so close to crotch, I almost said Metacrotch. Whoops. But that's it. I don't really have much more details on this one because it is, again, only playable in Japanese, or if, you're patient like Justin and can go on the screen and do a bunch of translation.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
well, as we've done previously, we're going to be doing these in chronological order. So
aside from the intro,
right,
which is not chronological, but yeah,
right. But the intro is the intro. So,
right, for sure.
So I'm going to start us off, and then Mike's going to have a few picks in a row, and it'll go back and forth. But to start us off, I'm going to play a track from Shin, Kidō, Senki, Gundam Wing Endless Duel. This is the SNES game that came out in 1996. This is the credits track, and it was composed by Hiroyuki Iwatsuki and Haruo Ohashi. Hey, you're back. That was Shin, Kidō, Senki, Gundam Wing, Endless Duel, 1996 SNES game. That was the credits track by Hiroyuki, Iwatsuki, and Haruo Ohashi.
This definitely has a kind of a finale vibe to it, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is very much in fitting, I mean, not just with Gundam Wing, but with the Gundam series style of, soundtrack. This is very much like end of the show, end of a movie,
Yes.
like an ending theme in a like Gundam style situation.
I think it's funny that our first two tracks kind of have this very spacey finale kind of vibe to it, because this is the finale of the Natsume history. So
Good way to kick it off.
To touch on that too, we understand and know that Natsume Atari is the official name of Natsume now, but that wasn't until 2013, and all the games that we're covering on this episode are prior to that.
Right.
So that's why we're continuing to say that they're Natsume Co-Limited. There's another side project, which we'll get into a little bit later, called Tengo Project. What you can know is that we have not forgotten about Tengo Project and their importance in Natsume's history, and we will be diving into that sometime next year, just as a heads up.
Yeah. And if you didn't know about that, now you have something to look forward to.
Yes, absolutely. Anyways, Gundam Wing Endless Duel, really fun game and great soundtrack by Hiroyuki Iwatsuki. We talked about this one on episode 97.
Oh, what was that?
That was Super Famicom games.
Yes. Was that with Nico or just us?
Yes, I believe that was with Nico.
Okay.
Yes, that was earlier this year, January. Yeah. Because his name's all over this one. So, and I played the Versus screen music, and man, I love that song, and I love this song.
The Versus is one of the best tracks on the soundtrack, and so obviously since you already played it, I was like, well, what's the next best one I like? And I really do like the almost everything on the soundtrack. I won't say I like the whole thing, because I think there's one or two that I'm just like on. But yeah, no, this was probably my next best pick.
I'm surprised you didn't pick anything from the PS1 games, because Natsume also did those games too.
I do have more experience with the PS1 game, or one of the PS1 games, but that's more Universal Century, which is like the main timeline of Gundam, whereas Wing is... I forget what they call them, but it's like an alternate universe, an alternate timeline. Like Wing, Iron-Blooded Orphans, G Gundam, the one where it's just like nonstop tournament fighting.
Yeah.
Those are all like alternate universes, basically.
Okay.
So, and
cool.
Wing was like my first Gundam series. This what got me into Gundam. So,
that makes sense.
Yeah, so I saw this and was just like, I know we played something from it before, but I want to put it on here.
Oh, for sure. No dislike on that. This is great. So, top notch.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about the game on that episode too, on 97. So go check out that episode if you want know a little bit more detailed history on it.
Yeah, but quick and dirty, it is a
gross.
It's a fighting game. Yeah,
That's how I do.
The down low the quick version is it is a fighting game where you get to fight as the mechs or the Gundams from the Gundam Wing. Endless Duel is the game. Endless Waltz is the movie.
Right.
And the movie has slightly different Gundams. I don't think the movie Gundams are actually in here. I think it's just the ones from the game, because like I see Wing, I see Death Scythe, and in the movie, Death Scythe became Death Scythe Hell. Wing became like I can't remember what it was, like Wing Zero,
Rodimus Prime.
Yeah. I hate Rodimus Prime. Worst thing to happen to Transformers.
Anyway, be stupid.
The best thing to happen to Transformers.
Yes.
So you get to play as each of the Gundams, and you fight each other. It's a standard fighting game, and it follows a lot of the old style Street Fighter tropes. You can roll down to forward, and it'll do something. There's Dragon Punch will do something else.
Yeah.
And they have not quite like hypers, but they have like supers. Like what you would expect on an SNES.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's one of the best fighters on the system.
Yes, that too.
Yeah, it's a shame we never got it, but again, Gundam wasn't super big back then in the U.S.
Yeah,
at that time.
not until like the late 90s.
Right.
Of the two import fighting games, the anime-based fighting games that I've played, being this and I forget what the DBZ game, DBZ Hyper Battle, I think it was.
Okay.
For the SNES, the Super Famicom, I guess. I prefer this. Like, I like DBZ more, but that game versus this one was a lot more fun.
Yeah. Natsume really hasn't done a lot of fighters.
No, I guess not.
Most of their games are action or, simulation based, like fishing and stuff like that. Racing, they've done quite a bit of. But yeah, they really haven't done that much of fighting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that they've done have been good. The ones on the PS1, also fighters. Best character, Big Zam, takes up the entire screen.
Nice.
But yeah, that's fair. And I mean, the one on the PS1 was also pretty fun. So
cool.
As we mentioned, Hiroyuki Iwatsuki, we have talked about to death. I don't think we've really talked much about Haruo Ohashi.
No.
So just to give you a taste of that, small resume. Started out in 1994 with Pocky and Rocky 2 on the SNES. Wild Guns, also 94. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, in 95 on the SNES. This game, and then Gekiso Sentai Karanger Zenkai Racer Senshi in 1996. Last credit is 1996 Saban's Power Rangers Zeo Battle Racers.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Nice. All right.
All right.
We're going from Zords to fishing.
Oh, that's a whiplash.
Yeah, it is. From the sky and space into the sea. Mark Davis, the Fishing Master, is the name of our game that came out on the Super NES in 1996. It did have a Japanese release that was without, it was just a fishing game, was without license. Summer is the name of this track, and it's by Kinuyo Yamashita and Iku Mizutani, who did sound direction. Thanks for joining us back on our history of Natsume Co. Limited. And this is the final chapter of our deep dive into their history. That track that we just heard was Mark Davis, the Fishing Master, and the track itself was called Summer, off of the Super Nintendo game that came out on 1996. Kinuyo Yamashita and Iku Mizutani are the composers. More specifically, Iku Mizutani's labeled as sound direction, but this one has Kinuyo Yamashita written all over it with, I think, tone and pitch definitely going towards Mizutani. So Man, I love this song. It's a banger, and I know I've talked to death about it before, but this is just a random fishing game that just has this beast soundtrack, and it even has a sequel called Mark Davis Pro Bass Challenge, which came out on the PS2 and the GameCube, and that one is published by Natsume, but I believe it's also composed by Iku Mizutani.
Oh, nice.
I'm not 100% sure, but I've heard it, and I'm like, whoa, this is great music, and it kind of has that Mizutani flair to it, so I think he worked on it, but yeah, don't quote me on that. Anyways.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Mark Davis, the fishing master. Mark Davis is a professional fisher. Fisherman? Fish guy?
Fisherman, yeah.
Fish guy.
Fish guy.
Fish guy.
You know, like Abe Sapien.
Yeah. The game features his voice, so you get to hear that southern drawl kind of come out, which is pretty cool. It's apparently a cult game just because it's very difficult, and there's a lot of attention to detail about things like the lures as well as like weather changes. There are 4 different seasons that you could play through: spring, summer, fall, winter. That's why this track is named Summer, because it plays during summer. The rest of the tracks are pretty good too, but man, this one, it does it for me. It's so chill and laid back with such a bouncy, boppy beat, but it also just has just like such a danceable kind of vibe to it. It's really fun to listen to. I could listen to this for hours and hours.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is, it was very relaxing. And it was funny, I forgot that the song was called Summer partway through. I was just like, this is a really chill song.
Yeah.
And now that you've reminded me that it is called Summer, it does kind of feel like, you know, being out on a boat in the middle of a lake or something, just like chilling in the summer, like relaxing summer track tunes.
We are recording this in the middle of August 2023, and so we're coming up on the end of summer. Summer's starting to cool down a little bit. It's just such a nice track to listen to. Like, put this on and go outside and sip some strawberry lemonade or something like that, and
or an Arnold palm tree,
or an Arnold palm tree. Hang out in your rocking chair and just fade away. Just turn to dust. I don't know.
Good advice.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, because this game is so difficult, I have tried to play it. It's really hard. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, and
it's in English.
And it's in English. Yeah, I mean the Japanese version is just, it's got a different name, but I don't think it has anything to do with Mark Davis. I don't think there's any audio.
No, but it's the same. It's the same game, except for the fact that they added Mark Davis stuff to the American version.
Right. It came out about a year later, or close to a year later, in North America. So yeah, they took a year to polish it up and fix it and make it more North American featured. So
localize it.
Yeah, that's it. You nailed it. So you are only allowed to catch black bass for points. Anything else that you catch does not add to your point score.
Count? Really?
Nope. Yeah. So there's different criterias as far as like moving on to the next level. Like, you have to pass a specific challenge. You can make your own fishing gear, which is pretty wild. And the fish apparently have extremely realistic AI as far as like when you try to catch them. So it's a pretty advanced fishing game on the Super NES. Like, should not be this advanced.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
That's kind of impressive, yeah.
Yeah, there is a practice mode, so it's not like you just jump into the game and lose. You can practice the weather and the season. You can pick which one you want, so that way you can try to, see how the seasons affect the weather and everything. And that's pretty much it. But I will say that when you are fishing in the training mode, the practice mode, the fish are guaranteed to show up during the practice session, and they appear as boat icons on the map. So you kind of know. I think the game kind of helps you out a little bit when you're doing that practice mode. But yeah, otherwise, like, there's no markers. So like, I cannot stress enough. I played this one on emulator because I think I captured footage for it for a video that I did on my YouTube channel where I like highlighted some underrated Super NES music, and I think that is where I played it. And I got a lot of comments, or a few comments from people that were like, "Oh, this just sounds like MIDI." I'm like, "You shut your hole. This sounds like magic."
Yeah, but
stardust and sparkles.
Yeah, saying it sounds like MIDI doesn't tell me if it's good or bad. It just tells me the the quality of the instruments.
MIDI is dope. I don't have a problem with MIDI.
Seriously.
If the instruments and the instruments don't matter as much if the song itself is great.
Yeah.
And the composition here is just phenomenal.
If you're just hating on MIDI, because to hate on MIDI, then I don't know what you're doing with your life.
Yeah.
Wasting it.
Making poor choices.
Yeah, lots of that.
So that's about it. Not much else to say about this one. So I guess we'll move on to my next pick.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you got
I
next
forgot.
time?
I'm rolling into
You got 3 in a row here.
Ooh, yummy. All right. So Dragon Dance is our next game. This is a Game Boy Color exclusive that came out in 1998. The track is BGM 05, and it's by my favorite composer, Iku Mizutani. All right. That was Dragon Dance, the Game Boy Color game that came out in 1998. The classic. Everyone knows this one. Not really.
I was just going to say, I'm like, uh-oh.
BGM 05 is the name of this track. It's basically the boss music, or the final boss music, if I recall. And it's by Iku Mizutani. What are your thoughts on this one?
I was really hooked on that bass line that they had going throughout it.
Yeah.
It and it also kind of reminds me of some Nobuo Uematsu Final Fantasy like 2 and 3, and I don't mean like 4 and 6. I mean like 2 and 3 on the NES.
Okay.
Not one for one or anything, but this has big boss battle or like high stakes battle vibes to it. Like I think Nobuo would have done like a final boss or big boss a little bit differently, but like this feels like something that could have been battle music or like alternate battle music in some of the earlier Final Fantasies. But all that's to say, I loved it.
Yeah, really good. Man, it's so good. I love this song. I found out about this one a long time ago, just trying to dig through Mizutani's catalog, and found this game and looked it up online, and it was super cheap. It was like $8, and so I grabbed it, and it really hasn't increased in price that much. You can get a loose copy of it now for like $14-15.
Oh wow.
That's one of the nice things about most of Mizutani's games is a lot of them are licensed, and a lot of them just went simply completely under the radar. So if you want to
licensed though, right?
What's that?
Well, this is
not a license.
Okay.
So this is a what do they call it? An Arkanoid? Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah.
Arkanoid?
The ball breaker.
The ball breaker game.
Yeah.
So this is a ball breaking game. You broke my balls.
Breaking my balls, man.
Breaking my balls, and you play as a dragon. So instead of having like a bar that like is at the bottom and you just bounce it off like some lifeless thing, instead you're playing as a dragon, and you can rotate your dragon around, kind of like almost like Snake, the game Snake.
Okay.
A little bit. I'm trying to remember if you can go all over the place. I think you can. I think that you can go all over the map to bounce the balls. but it gets really difficult. There's like, I think 99 to 100 levels or something like that.
Wow.
Or maybe level 100 is the boss or something. But yeah, it's super fun. It's published by Crave Games here in the US. It's a lot of fun. There's different power-ups you can get to increase the size of your dragon. That's what she said.
Nice.
So yeah, it's a really fun game. There isn't a ton of music, so this is probably the best track on the soundtrack. The rest of it is all, you know, pretty bouncy, you know, kind of laid back, similar to stuff like Tailgater that he's done, you know, where it's more chill. But yeah, this one really stood out to me, and I was like, yo, good stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, no, very, very good energy. I really like this. If the soundtrack is equally intense, I'll have to check this one out.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe there's one or two other tracks on here that are kind of similar to this, but they're short. Like, a lot of the other songs on the soundtrack are pretty short. This is probably the longest one, so I think this and maybe, like, the Staff Roll are the longest tracks. So.
Fair.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Coming up next, we're going to continue the Game Boy Color love with the 2001 game Action Man Search for Base X. I did a review on this one last year in 2022. Boss is the name of the song, and it's by Iku Mizutani.
XVGM Radio.
Oh man, you're back. And that was a game called Action Man Search for Base X. It was a Game Boy Color exclusive that came out in 2001. And that track was the Boss music by Iku Mizutani, if you couldn't tell. Man, this whole soundtrack is a gem. A complete hidden gem of VGM, in my opinion. Nobody talks about this game except me. Nobody.
Yeah, I've heard of it, and I've only heard of it because of you.
Right.
So
it's same thing. Like, I was just diving through his Game Boy Color stuff. All of his Game Boy Color releases for Natsume, like during that era, kind of made it a little bit of a reminiscence of the NES era of their games. Very
Makes
similar
sense.
style, very similar tone of everything. Obviously, a little bit more sawtooth bass in the bass lines there. This game is a lot of fun. It is definitely difficult, not easy at all. Once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. But man, I played it on normal, and it was still a huge challenge to beat. I beat it, and it's a lot of fun. But this music, really love that bass line, that almost like punkish kind of do 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 do.
It's a very common punk chord progression.
Yeah, but then the melody, kind of has this like fast country vibe to it, kind of like a Charlie Daniels kind of. I can picture like
like a violin,
like
or
a fiddle, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can picture something like that. But this one's just, it's a rocker. It's so much fun to listen to, and playing against the boss. Again, very difficult to choose music from this game. I knew I wanted to include it, but all of the music is good. All of the music is fantastic. So if you're looking for a Game Boy Color soundtrack to bop to, this is it right here.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think it's also partly because of the general chord progression and some of the way that some of this music was coming out. I got Pirates of the Caribbean vibes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of see that. Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean it was fine. It didn't like turn me off from the song, but it was just kind of making me laugh because like this was a pretty intense and pretty like driving song, and then in the background I'm just hearing like Captain Jack Sparrow falling off a cliff or something.
I see it. Yeah. Makes sense.
But yeah, no, I like this one. Another one that I will have to search out the soundtrack for because this was fun.
It's so good. Like I bought this game at Retro World Expo a couple years ago, actually a lot of years ago, for like $5. Something like that. And it just sat on my shelf, and I finally sat down and played it one day and was like, whoa, this game's pretty fun. It's difficult, but really fun. And man, this music is great. And I was just like, it's a banger. Another Mizutani banger. I love it.
Mizutani Jam.
Oh, yeah. But let's move away from Mizutani and get into your next pick.
Only for a moment.
Yes.
So my next track here is going to be from Shaun Palmer's Pro Snowboarder. This is a GBA game that came out in 2001. The track is BGM 02, and it was composed by, as you said, Yoshio Watanabe.
Hi there, I'm Mark Davis. You may know me as the fishing master from such games as Mark Davis's Fishing Master. But the seas have run me ragged over the years, and suddenly I've developed a tremendous seasickness disease called burgeritis. Don't worry, it's no contagious. But burgeritis forced me to eat burgers every day for the rest of my life in order to stay on this boat. So then I thought, why not combine my love of fishing and being on the sea with the horrible yet delicious ailment I suffer from? That's where you come in. To my boat, of course. I've opened up Mark Davis's Burger Master, where you'll be able to enjoy a round of fishing and gorge yourself on one of my fine, kind burgers. Our wait staff will serve you the best drinks this side of the seas as you wait for your choice of burger to be delivered to your table. Perhaps the pineapple mango burger will quench your summer thirst. Want something a little more autumnish? How about our pumpkin spice burger? Or our peppermint Santa special will make you miss those winter blues. But what's that? Not a fan of red meat? Got a hankering for some salmon burger? How about our cherry blossom salmon burger? Perfect for the springtime. Order any burger and drink and grab some cheese fries and no extra costs. That's right, free cheese fries. Join us at the River Barge on East Main Oakenberry Lodge Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays and experience the magic of burgers and fishing.
Come on down to Mark Davis's Burger Master floating restaurant today, and remember, everyone except Florida residents gets an after-dinner mint. And yeah, it's the Andes mints. The good kind. We're open from 12 noon to midnight, Wednesdays and weekends only. This restaurant is owned by Serbia Steve Holdings. Please note, Serbia Steve is not responsible for any food poisoning whatsoever.
I'm Serbia Steve, and I approve this massage.
Hey, you're back, and that was Shaun Palmer's Pro Snowboarder, the GBA game that came out in 2001. This game also came out on the Game Boy Color and the PlayStation, but the games were a little different from each other, and obviously the music was different. So this was BGM02, composed by Yoshio Watanabe.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Natsume also created the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games for Game Boy Color as well.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
I wonder if that has something to do. I mean, the Game Boy Color version of Shaun Palmer Snowboarder was not created by Natsume. It was ITL. So I'm wondering if the game development just kind of shifted over to a different company because Tony Hawk 1 and 2 were being worked on at around the same time as this.
Maybe. I mean, I know that the PS2 version was developed by Dearsoft, and I think all of this franchise was published by Activision. So,
Oh, okay.
They're publishing it. 3 different games, each developed by a different company. But yeah, no, the Tony Hawk stuff might be part of it.
Yeah. That Tony Hawk 1 has a great soundtrack on the Game Boy Color. The game is kind of meh. The second game's a little better, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how the Tony Hawk game translates from what it was on the PlayStation to a Game Boy. Like, I know it's been done better in, like, some of the later handhelds.
It's limited.
But yeah.
It's for sure limited. It's fun to mess around with, but, like, I don't know if this game is similar, but it's not one of those kind of games where you can advance, sort of. It's more like just repetitive playing.
Just do the thing. Just play
just play the
around.
thing. Yeah. So, yeah, there's no, like, you did it, you beat the game, kind of. At least not from the vibes that I played with the game.
That's fair. Yeah, I'm sure the snowboarding game is a little bit different because usually there's a start and an end point because you are going down a giant mountain when you're snowboarding. And interestingly enough, I feel like I remember Shaun White's snowboarding games, and those must have come a little bit later because Shaun Palmer is, a little bit older than Shaun White, preceded him by a bit. Although in this game, you can choose your snowboarder from a group that includes Shaun White, Shaun Palmer, obviously, Ingmar Bachmann, and Tara Dekides, as well as a couple others. There's 16 different tracks in this game, and there's 4 different mountains, 4 different locations that you can do your snowboarding and your tricks and your styles.
That's pretty cool.
So, yeah, it looks kind of neat. I mean, I would probably play this on the Game Boy Advance before I played it on the Game Boy Color, although I'm curious, again, to see what it looks like in the Game Boy Color. But yeah, I enjoyed a lot of those games around this time. Like, I enjoyed the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games, Matt Hoffman's BMX, I want to say.
Yeah.
I remember renting that, and I want to say I played some of the Shaun White snowboarding games, but, it might just be SSX.
Yeah.
I remember playing a lot of SSX games.
Yeah, what was the other guy's name? Like Dave something or other? Dave Mira.
Oh, Dave Mira. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but I remember those games too, so, yeah.
Good stuff. But this track, very, very much bass heavy. The bass line is very prominent in this. And overall, I find that something like this kind of fits with just the skating, snowboarding aesthetic. Obviously, if you're not going to have, licensed music like the Tony Hawk games, or rather the Tony Hawk PlayStation games, where you've got all this punk and ska and all this stuff, I think this is like good background snowboarding music.
Yeah, I mean, it does its job pretty favorably. I don't think it's a bad track, but I also think it's just kind of like generic in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's just more background noise that's fun to listen to, but not so much fun out of the game.
Yeah, it's not something that you necessarily focus on.
Right. Yeah, so that makes sense. But still pretty cool to feature. They can't all be bangers.
No. And I mean, it's okay to like take a break every so often.
Yeah, it's okay to, take a break from Mizutani just for a little bit.
Yeah, just for one track.
Just for one track, yeah.
So Yoshio Watanabe started out doing sound in Dan Doko Dan in 1990. That's a TurboGrafx 16 game.
Yes.
He did background music arrange on the Jetsons' Robot Panic in 1992 on the Game Boy. Sound composer on Meitante Konen, Chika Yuenchi Satsujin Jiken in 1996 on the Game Boy. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 on the Game Boy Color, music composition on that. And this is actually his last composition credit.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah.
Interesting.
All right, let's jump back into Mizutani. What you got?
All right, Mizutani's back with Power Rangers Time Force. This is a Game Boy Color game that came out in 2001, same year as the previous game. And Fabled City Future version is the name of the track. And again, by Mizutani. Oh man, Justin, you better pick your jaw up off the floor because that was the end of the song.
Okay.
Power Rangers Time Force, the Game Boy Color game that came out in 2001. Ika Mizutani slapped us in the gullet with Fabled City Future. Oh my goodness, what a track.
A lot of fun. It feels like a very heroic track. It's very, very bright, very positive. I don't want to say it feels like an ending track. It does kind of feel almost like, we've succeeded.
I believe there's 3 parts of this level. There's Fabled City, past, present, and then future. In this game, it's a action side scroller, very similar to like Chojin Sentai Jetman. It wasn't developed by Natsume technically, but a bunch of Natsume people worked on it basically. Hiroyuki Iwatsuki did the soundtrack. And that is based on the Sentai game, Chojin Sentai Jetman. So this is Power Rangers Time Force based on some version of Sentai or whatever. But yeah, it's based on the Power Rangers series that came out right around this time. There were a couple different games made for it. There was one made for the PlayStation, which also, I believe, released on the PC. And there was a Game Boy Advance game made by Vicarious Visions. But this one specifically definitely is exclusive to the Game Boy Color. The Game Boy Advance version is totally different. It's more of a beat 'em up. This is more of just like platforming, getting from stage to stage. And, stopping the bad guys. You can play as any 5 of the Time Force Rangers. There's Green Ranger, Pink Ranger, Yellow Ranger, Red Ranger, and Blue Ranger.
Yep.
And the game also does have Megazord battles as well, so you can do that too. Very similar to, again, Chojin Sentai Jetman. But yeah, it's a really fun game that is kind of, again, under the radar amongst action game fans. I don't know what it is about Natsume handheld games, but they are incredibly underrated, both musically and gameplay-wise. They're a lot of fun. This one, I think, fares a little better than I think it's the follow-up, which is Lightspeed Rescue.
Okay, yeah.
Again, Game Boy Color game was created by Natsume. Again, a Mizutani soundtrack. Wanted to feature that one, but there's less music in that one, and the music is great.
Yeah, I think you have played something from that, either on a Patreon episode or on a regular episode.
Possibly.
I remember the name of that game. Maybe it's just because you were talking about it when you're at RWX, but...
Yeah. We've only played from Power Rangers the movie and Power Rangers on Game Boy and Power Rangers on Super NES during our Natsume episode.
Okay.
For the first one. So, yeah, those are the only Power Rangers games that we actually played from. So I'm not sure if... It was most likely me just talking about Mizutani to you.
Probably.
Or more like me talking at you about Mizutani, because I feel like it's hard when... It'd be like if Justin was talking to me about Nobuo Uematsu. Like, I like Uematsu's stuff, but like Justin's a super fan. Mm-hmm. So if Justin was like diving deep into like the nitty gritty details on like some random Uematsu game that like I had never heard of, I'd be like, yes, Justin, like just nodding. So I feel like half the time I'm like, so then Mizutani like ate sushi and then he banged out this jam, and Justin's like, okay, can I go to bed now? Yeah.
No, never.
No. Fun game, great soundtrack, really good stuff. Loved it. Yeah, definitely pick this one up if you can. Again, cheap game. I think it goes for like $8 now, loose. Just grab it.
Game Boy Color. Fun system.
Yeah. Now we're going to be moving into a game that I reviewed this game this year.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason that I picked it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so this is going to be Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Wrath of the Darkhul King. This came out in 2003 on the Game Boy Advance. The track is just called Track 9, and it was composed by Mizutani, Tetsuari Watanabe, and Kinuyo Yamashita. Hey there, that was track 9 from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Wrath of the Darkhul King, the 2003 Game Boy Advance game by Mizutani, Tetsuari Watanabe, and Kinuyo Yamashita.
Yeah, man. I know quite a bit about this game because I spent a lot of time with it earlier this year.
I was going to say.
Yeah. This music plays during the first stage, the basically tutorial training intro stage to the game, where you're just going through the streets. So I would even call this like streets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if I was to give it a proper name. I don't think it has a proper name anywhere, but...
Buffy on the streets.
On the streets, yo.
Willow in the sheets.
Oh, there you go. There you go. You always strike me as a Willow guy.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay. All right. That fits. Yeah. So this game is a side-scroller action beat-em-up kind of platforming game. Got, I'd say, more like beat-em-up elements to it in terms of the style of gameplay, but there's 16 different levels and you're going through a bunch of different places that are all pretty familiar if you've ever watched the show Buffy. Stuff like, the streets, college campus, cemetery, stuff like that.
Now, this takes place specifically during the 4th season of the show, which is Buffy and the gang's freshman year in college.
Right, correct. And so if you have not seen season 4, it is a little bit confusing because they're introducing all these characters that I never heard of at the time, like Adam.
Oh, Adam's the big bad of season 4.
He is, and the gentlemen also are bad guys in this one.
Oh, yeah.
Which I originally thought that on the cover of the game, it's the gentleman, but I thought when I was reviewing this game, I mentioned it, that it was the master, because they kind of look like the master from season 1.
I was going to say, yeah, it's from season 1.
Yeah, and it is not, and people definitely let me know. Buffy fans were like, yo, that ain't the master, and I was like, yeah, but it kind of looks like him. But yeah, no, so it's based on the 4th season. You're playing as Buffy, and Buffy is dating Riley.
Riley, yeah.
And Riley is basically the super soldier guy who works for this group called the Initiative, I think.
Yeah.
So the game features Buffy going after this being called the Darkhul King, and he is essentially going to destroy the world if he gets revived. In the game, his sprite kind of looks like a Power Ranger villain. It's kind of weird, but yeah, he's a big bad. You get to combine weapons in this game, which is pretty cool. It's very confusing on how to do that. It was one of those games where like you figure out how to play like well into the game, and then you're like, oh, that's how you combine weapons. The manual doesn't make sense as far as combining weapons, but you can combine different types of weapons. They give you all these weapons like axe, crossbow, dagger, flamethrower, holy water, laser rifle, a torch, and the glove of Minigon. But the thing about the glove of Minigon is they really pump this up to being like the weapon that can kill the Darkhul King, and it's like kind of a meh weapon. Like it's one of those like you can find it a couple times and use it a few times, but like once you use it, that's it. Like you can't really.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's not really that great, but you get a ton of weapons that you can find in boxes and stuff like that, in crates. And there's health everywhere. Like every time you beat an enemy, you have to stake them, and when you stake them, you get health. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So it's fun. I mean, the writing is very Buffy-ish. It's kind of like Buffy Light in a way. It does feel like a Buffy game. I don't know. The game got bad reviews or not great reviews, kind of a mixed bag for the most part. But I thought it was pretty fun. This song is pretty fun. Definitely a very spooky atmosphere, and it definitely throws out some haunting kind of melodies with that chorus and everything.
Yeah, I really do like the choral vocal bits that are used throughout it. It does make it a bit like haunting, if not a little cheesy.
Yeah, it's a pretty by-the-book soundtrack for the most part in terms of it sounding both like something you might hear if Mizutani and Kinuyo Yamashita did a Buffy game. So it fits. It's not as upbeat, I'd say, as most of their other works, but I think it still fits with the games.
Not that there's no upbeat moments in Buffy, but like the soundtrack to Buffy tends to be a bit darker. It's, not quite gothic horror, but gothic horror sitcom almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So Kinuyo Yamashita and Mizutani, we have talked about quite a bit. I don't think we've really had much to say about Tetsuari Watanabe.
No.
So Tetsuari started doing sound data on Medarot Navi Kuwagata So that was a 2001 GBA game. First music credit I see here, 2002 with Family Tennis Advance on the GBA.
Yeah, Mizutani worked on that one as well as Monsters, Inc. And multiple of these games he worked hand in hand with Mizutani.
Gotcha, yeah. Because I see a lot of sound, a few sound designers, but things like Metabots Infinity, Power Rangers Ninja Storm, and a game we're going to talk about in just a moment, Full Metal Alchemist Duel Sympathy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I guess we'll move right into that. That is the
nice setup,
here.
Justin.
Yeah. So Full Metal Alchemist Duel Sympathy was a game that came out on the Nintendo DS. What, a DS game with the word duel in the title?
What?
No.
With a second word with the letter S?
Yeah.
No.
Crazy.
That's almost like a Super Nintendo game being called Super.
Something, yeah.
Something.
Fair. So, Nintendo DS game that came out in 2005. The track is Stage 02, and the composers on this are Tetsuari Watanabe and Kaoru Mizutani. Right, and that was Full Metal Alchemist Duel Sympathy with Stage 2, the Nintendo DS game that came out in 2005, composed by Tetsuari Watanabe and Kaoru Mizutani.
This was an interesting song. I was really hoping that those sampled guitars in the background would turn up a little bit because they were so quiet. Like, I was really trying to focus on those. But I really like the MIDI piano here, and it's just got a fun, funky kind of vibe to it. I really liked it.
Yeah, this reminds me of kind of like a character select screen in like a Marvel vs. Capcom
Choose
game.
your fighter. Yeah.
Gonna take you for a ride.
Yeah.
I mean, not quite that funky, but yeah,
Sure.
yeah. It just had that kind of vibe for me. A little bit jazzy, a little bit funky, not too funky. I think it's because of those, like you said, those guitars were a little quiet in the background. Bringing them forward could have been a little bit better, but I just kind of enjoyed the vibe of this one.
Yeah. No, I dig it. This came out in the U.S.?
Yes. Came out in North America in December of 2006.
Oh, interesting.
Came out in Japan in July of 2005.
I think the anime series was pretty big around that time.
So this game came out coinciding with the release of the movie.
Oh, okay.
Along with a PS2 game. So this game came out 2 days before the Full Metal Alchemist movie. And for those who love Full Metal Alchemist, this is all pre-Brotherhood. I mean, obviously based on the dates, but this is the original Full Metal Alchemist anime run, followed by the movie Conqueror of Shambhala.
Yeah.
Which was a very interesting way to kind of like wrap the series up and do this whole like alternate universe thing. But are you familiar with the Full Metal Alchemist series and movies?
Kind of. I have seen a handful of episodes of Full Metal Alchemist.
So this game and a PS2 game called Full Metal Alchemist 3: The Girl Who Succeeded God came out 2 days before the Conqueror of Shambhala movie.
Oh, wow. So they really kind of lined it up so that, there'd be a bunch of stuff related to the franchise.
Absolutely. I mean, the franchise was huge. I think it still kind of is. I don't know. Like, it's probably died down since they've completed, the manga and the anime series. There's a live action movie, which I know I've seen the first movie on Netflix, and it's all right. But this game covers the entire 51 episodes of the original Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
okay.
It starts from the beginning, and you go through to the end. All the characters are there. Scar, Winry. You play as Ed, and Al is also on screen. It's kind of like a side-scrolling brawler, like a Final Fight or a Battletoad type of a thing.
Okay.
And you're more or less just playing through the original story of Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh, yeah. Graphics look pretty neat, and looks like a pretty fun game. I'll have to check this out. I've never really played any Full Metal Alchemist game, mostly because I'm just not that familiar with the franchise. But I like the appeal of, hey, it starts at the beginning of the series.
Yeah.
Because then you're basically getting the Cliff Notes version of what you need to care about. And that's a cool thing. And it's a beat 'em up, similar to Final Fight.
Yeah.
So
Which
I'm
you
down
also
for
like,
that.
so
I love me some beat 'em up, so I'm down.
Yeah, and so I guess you play through initially as Ed Elric, but you can unlock and play as other characters. So after the game is completed, the character mode is unlocked, and then you can play as Alphonse Elric, you can play as Roy Mustang, who everybody loves, Izumi Curtis, Alex Lewis Armstrong, who's awesome, and even Scar, who's a semi-villain / anti-hero.
That's the one who killed Mufasa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Threw him right off a cliff.
Yeah. Simba.
But yeah, no, Scar's a character named because he has a giant X scar across his face.
Okay.
Similar to how Al will occasionally pop in and accompany Ed when you're playing through the original time, Riza Hawkeye will accompany Mustang. She's his like second in command in the series.
This game is still pretty cheap too. I mean, you can get a complete in-box copy for like $20-$30.
I might actually have to go out for that because I do like the Full Metal Alchemist line of things, and I also have never played a Full Metal Alchemist game.
There you go.
So
I will look for 2 copies of it. One for you, one for me.
I appreciate that. Cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this looks like a lot of fun. The music, it was actually kind of hard to pick a track for this one because the whole soundtrack was actually really good. So I'm excited to maybe eventually get a copy of this. And yeah, listen to more if you enjoyed the smooth sounds of what you just heard.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Awesome. I'm stoked to try to hunt this one down now.
Yeah. So Tetsuari Watanabe we just talked about, and Kaoru Mizutani only has 2 credits, sound on this game and software engineer for a game called Puzzle and Dragons in 2012.
Yeah, we're not really sure if they're related to Ika Mizutani, but same last name, so maybe like some sort of relative in some way, shape, or form.
Possibly.
Who knows? All right, so no more Mizutani, I promise. But we are going to move on to my next pick, which is my last pick. Omega 5 is the name of the game, and this is a Xbox 360 game that came out in 2008. And this is Stage 1, the Glacial Fortress, or the Glacial Fortress, as they say in-game. I swear, they say it, not me.
I get it.
This one's by Hiroyuki Iwatsuki. Oh man, that was a silly spacey time. That was Omega 5, or Omega 5, as they say in the game. That was a 360 exclusive that came out in 2008. And that was Stage 1, The Glacial Fortress by Hiroyuki Iwatsuki. We touched on this a little earlier in the episode, but this game is the first game that was worked on by Tengo Project, which was a small team that was created within Natsume. The game was published by Hudson Soft, and originally it was going to come out on the 3DS as well. But unfortunately, the port was canceled because Konami got their mitts on Hudson. So the release was canceled, unfortunately.
The 3DS or just the DS?
The 3DS, 2011. So this is going to be a very early release, most likely digitally, I assume, for the 3DS as a downloadable game. But this is a really fun shooter. And I bought it because it said Natsume on the title, and then I found out that Iwatsuki was doing the soundtrack, and this was back in the day when the resources for VGM was a lot less. So I was kind of like, wow, I haven't heard his name in a long time. I knew of him in 2008, but like I only knew him from maybe a handful of titles, not nearly as much as I know him from now. I checked out the demo and it was really fun, and I was like, I'm going to pick this up. It was like $10, and it's a great game. You can get it still on the 360. I think it's forwards compatible with like the Xbox One and possibly even the Series X. I'm not sure about Series X, but definitely Xbox One. I think I have it downloaded, so you should grab it because who knows? It could be pulled at any moment. If you're into shmups, it's a blast. It is a very kind of tricky game to get used to with the controls, but once you get used to controls, it's a lot of fun. So you could play as up to, I believe, either 4 or 5 characters. The main character is this woman named Ruby, who's basically just wearing like lingerie. Tempest is this alien who's got 4 arms and is really like buff and tough. Rad is kind of like a faster version of Ruby, but her aim is slower than Ruby is. So, yeah. And then Sensei is unlocked by beating the game with Tempest. And he's like this old samurai, and he's riding a flying sled. And he's with his dog, who's also a warrior, named Rikimaru. So Rikimaru is considered the 5th warrior of Omega 5, but I don't believe he's unlockable as playable. So, yeah. If you press the right bumper on the Xbox 360's controller, it pulls up your dimensional field, and that makes it so that you basically go into this dimension that allows you to move around the screen without getting hurt. It does use your life, though, so it's basically used as like an emergency escape thing. I think the less you use that, the better your ranking is, but I can't remember. I'm possibly wrong on that one.
No, the more you use that.
Yeah. Then there's an ultimate burst that you can release with the left trigger, and that is just basically this bomb that like destroys everything. It's fun. It's wacky and different, and it's a pretty neat shooter. What's cool is that if you beat the game with, I think, all the characters, or maybe just 2 of the characters, I can't remember again, but you can unlock a retro mode for the soundtrack and game. The game, it basically just makes the graphics look way worse, not like stylized as like an old school, like true 16-bit game. They put like this weird filter on it that just makes it look blurry and like distorted and pixelated, and it just doesn't look good. But musically, they did create a 16-bit version of the soundtrack, and it's hard to peg down exactly what they're filtering it through, like what Iwatsuki decided to filter it through. It's not quite Genesis, it's not quite Super Nintendo, it just sounds old. It's really hard for me to explain without like showing it to you. This is not that version. This version that we heard today is very much the original version. I toyed with the idea of including that, or possibly the arranged version of the song, because those are great. The arrangements are great. Those are on the actual official soundtrack, which was not going to release, but Manabu Numiki, a fellow game composer who's worked with M2 and stuff like that, he just was like, yo, Iwatsuki, this is dope. You got to release this. So they did, and then they created a bunch of arrangements. It's pretty cool. What did you think of the song?
It was very spacey. which I liked. There was a lot of trying to think like what that sound was. It was kind of like buzzy, kind of staticky, and it was bouncing between the left and the right speakers. And I thought that was a really interesting piece of the track. Like I kept finding myself tuning into that as it came in and out. But yeah, no, overall, I think this is kind of the first Red Book audio track in tonight's episode. So it definitely stands out from the rest in a positive way. It's just I've gotten so used to hearing chip tunes and everything else that we've been hearing that like this is kind of like a drink of water, almost like it's a palate cleanser.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I will say that there's a lot of like progressive rock elements in this track too, especially those keys. You've got those like keyboard runs where they're like like and like sustaining those really high pitched like almost Moog synth, where it's just like wee. It's stuff that you would hear in like certain types of like goblin tracks, like on some horror movies and stuff like that. So it was pretty neat. I dug it.
Yeah.
A
lot of fun.
So that's my wrap up for Natsume, but you've got one final track for us.
Yes. So closing us out will be Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. This is a Nintendo DS game that came out in 2009. The track is just track 8, and the composers on this are Hiroyuki Iwatsuki, Tatsuya Fujiwara, and Seiichi Takamoto. Hey, you are back, and we are at the end of this Natsume deep dive. This was Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, which came out in 2009 on the Nintendo DS. Track 8 was the name of what you just heard, and it was composed by Hiroyuki Iwatsuki, Tatsuya Fujiwara, and Seiichi Takamoto.
I don't think I've played this one, although I've definitely seen the Wii version of the game, which was made by a different company. But
yes, the Wii version was developed by Eating.
This had a nice crunchy groove to it, and it really kind of felt like a beat-em-up game, like a more modern take on a beat-em-up soundtrack, so I thought it was pretty neat.
Yeah, that's funny, because I think the Wii version kind of is a beat-em-up.
Oh, okay.
The Nintendo version is a fighting game.
Oh, okay.
And it is a single-player fighting game.
Oh, okay. All right, then.
There is no multiplayer support, oddly enough, and I mean, for the Nintendo DS, like, there were so many ways to do multiplayer. There was download play, which I loved, and I wish that would make some kind of a comeback.
I know.
That was such a great way to do things.
Yeah.
But between that and just like Wi-Fi and the other things, I am surprised that they made a Kamen Rider fighting game that it's just single player.
Yeah, that's pretty weird.
Yeah, so it is very weird. So in this game, you use something that are called advent cards to perform special attacks, depending on how much the advent gauge is filled up when you're fighting, with the final vent being used when all 3 of your advent gauge bars are full. You can charge Kamen Rider's advent gauge by touching and holding the rider until all 3 bars are full. Yeah, you can also select 2 or more different cards before starting a battle, so like what cards you want to use. There's also a Ventara mode, which is a series of missions that you can fight Advent Beasts and other Kamen Riders. You have a chance of unlocking them as well as more Advent cards in certain missions. So there's a final boss named Xaviax, I think. That's got a different ending for each of the playable riders.
Oh, okay. I know nothing about it.
Yeah, neither do I. I'm just kind of going over what I learned and read during the time that we listened to that track.
Yeah, I remember there was a Sega CD game that came out a while back, like back in the day. But again, well under the radar. I mean, I think it was only popular because Power Rangers was a thing. And then there was like all those other clones like VR Troopers and stuff like that. So
Yep.
These other composers, though, I don't think we've talked about, right?
No. So Tatsuya Fujiwara started out with music on Seireke Rayblade in 2000 on the Dreamcast and the PlayStation.
Okay.
Theme song, Chain of Spirits, and music in Shaman King Power of Spirit came out in 2004 on the PlayStation 2. Background music in Lair Land Story in 2009 on the PSP. And most recent... No, that's a remake of that same game. Looks like the last credit I see here for sound, anyway, was they were part of the new sound team for Mario Kart Arcade GP DX.
Oh,
came
cool.
out in 2013.
Okay.
And then Seiichi Takamoto started out doing music in International Superstar Soccer 2 in 2002, and then followed that up with Superstar Soccer 3 in 2003, both on the GameCube.
Yeah.
They did music on Disney Sports Snowboarding in 2003 on the Game Boy Advance.
So those are all Konami games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in 2009, also worked on Lair Land Story for the PSP. Most recently, they did music as part of Solitude Inc. for Project X Zone 2 in 2016.
Oh, great. Great soundtrack and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Good game. Yeah. That brings us to the end of our Natsume history. Well, sort of, not quite. We already kind of teased that we're going to do a follow-up sometime next year where we go over some of the newer remakes that have been coming out via that Tengo project that we kind of talked about. Omega 5 we'll probably revisit just to briefly talk about again, just since that is the first Tengo project game that did come out. But yeah, we're going to be talking about stuff like Wild Guns Reloaded, the newest Pocky and Rocky sequel, as well as the upcoming Shadow of the Ninja remake, or Kage, or Blue Shadow, or whatever you want to call it these days. So yeah, so I figure we'll wait until that comes out and then we'll kind of revisit that. So look forward to that sometime in 2024. But it's kind of bittersweet. I mean, Natsume, as far as like where they've been and what they've done, they've accomplished quite a lot, and mostly a lot of licensed games. But man, some truly banger soundtracks that if you've been listening for this entire trilogy of episodes that we've done on this company, it's just, I've always wanted to tackle Natsume for years and years and years, and I'm glad that we finally got the opportunity to do so. So I know it was a Hulk-tastic effort.
Herculean effort.
Herculean or Hulk-tastic.
Hulk-tastic.
Yeah, it was Hulk-tastic. It made you go green. But mean and green. But yeah, I hope that what people get out of this is that there are some great Natsume soundtracks out there that are owned to some games that are kind of a mix of good and bad and great. So
yeah. Absolutely. Do you have a favorite track?
For this episode, man, that's tough. Of course, probably a Mizutani track. I would probably say it's down between Action Man and Power Rangers Time Force. Both of those are so good. I also really love that Mark Davis track, The Fishing Master, and
Agreed.
Your Endless Duel track is great too. So I love it all. All of this stuff was great, but I will say you've really got me intrigued on that Full Metal Alchemist game. I'm going to definitely try to pick that up.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Do what I can.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, similar. I was really digging that Mark Davis track, as you said, and then I also really like the Power Ranger Time Force and the Omega 5 track. Those are all up there. And then on the stuff that I played, I really dug the Dragon Knight track that I picked. Obviously, that's why I picked it. And then the Full Metal Alchemist track, it surprised me, which was part of the reason that I picked it.
Yeah.
I was expecting, an anime-based video game to either, especially like on the Nintendo DS, where they're limited in what they can put on the card, but I kind of expected them to use music from like the anime or something,
right,
instead of having somebody create new music.
Sure.
But I'm glad that they did, because Tetsuari Watanabe and Kaoru Mizutani did a great job with that really kind of jazzy soundtrack.
Yeah, that song was great, and I'm looking forward to like really diving into that soundtrack and checking out the rest of it. So cool.
Same.
What about you guys? Let us know in our various social media or comments on our Discord, or email us, whatever you want. Just touch base with us and let us know what you thought of this Natsume deep dive.
So, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons, without whom this show's continued improvement would be impossible. They are Cam Worma, Jordan and Anson Davis, Rage Cage, Kung Fu Carlito of the Heroes 3 podcast, Scott McElhone, Chris Myers, Brad Austin, Chris Murray, Llama Adam, Marcus Stewart, Nick Davis, and Ryan McPherson.
If you would like to become a patron, you can sign up at patreon.com/XVGM Radio. There you can see the different tiers as well. Just $1 gets you a thank you and access to our monthly live shows.
You can visit our website, xvgmradio.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and learn more about your hosts, as well as any of our guests or composers that we've had on the show.
If you'd like to reach out to us, you can always email us at xvgmradio@gmail.com.
If you like what you've heard, please consider giving us a review on iTunes.
You can join our Facebook group and chat with other VGM lovers at www.facebook.com/groups/XVGM Radio, where we talk about everything from current game news to sharing awesome VGM tracks, or just talking about the podcast itself.
You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle on both those sites is @XVGM Radio.
If you don't have any other social media or just want to try something unique, check us out on our Discord group chat. Links in the show notes. All right, so we've got a little bit to talk about as far as what's coming out or what just came out. On the 12th of September, we released XVGM After Dark, where we covered the Resident Evil vinyl, the bootleg. It's like a radio drama, so it's basically audio clips from the game with the voices and everything of the voiceover dialogue mixed in with the soundtrack. It's really a unique experience to listen to, and I highly recommend you go check out that. That's on twitch.tv/shock83j16. So go watch that if you haven't seen it already. We've got, a live show coming up on
the 24th.
Yeah.
So we've missed a few live shows recently because the summer has been absolutely insane for Mike and I. We are very thankful to our very understanding patrons. So we are going to be getting back to the live show, the first live show since June.
Yeah, late June. I mean, we did make a decision to cut back on the live show based on your feedback for patrons. So we are going to be doing, instead of monthly, every other month, but we're going to get back on schedule with live shows with this back to school. We'll probably do these two back to back. So we'll do back to school on September 24th.
Yep.
And then, of course, we got to do the backstage pass to Spooky Fest.
Yes, October we'll see our classic Spooky Fest backstage pass.
Right.
And then after that, it'll be December, which will be interesting because we always tend to miss the December live show. But we had been doing them on Fridays. We have now switched to doing them on Sundays. So
yes.
If Fridays was not good for you and Sunday evenings is a better time to join in on a live show, that's what we're doing. We hope that works out.
Yeah. And the links to that are in the Discord if you have Discord. Otherwise, you can request it. If you prefer it, we can send it to you via Patreon.
Yes.
So it's just $1 down to join. Sign up if you're interested. If not, that's okay too.
Yeah. And then coming up in October, we have none other than Spooky Fest 2023.
I'm sorry, what?
Spooky Fest.
Yeah. Returning now 5th annual Spooky Fest. I'm excited. I'm stoked. I'm spooked.
This is going to be good.
Yeah, should be some good stuff.
Yeah, hopefully we'll run into some patrons, and maybe they'll make some requests.
Yes.
So we'll see what we've got, but stay tuned for a very spooky special next month.
Spooky. All right. Well, we'll see you in a month for some spookiness. This is Mike
And Justin.
signing off for XVGM Radio. That's right. Free cheese strut. Ugh.
Come on down to Come on down. Yeah,
Sorry.
it's okay.
Now we're going to be moving into a game that I reviewed this game this year.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason that I picked it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so this is going to be Vampire the Buffy Slayer.
Vampire the Buffy Slayer.
Yep.
Yes.